Hey, what's up, dudes? Alright, another day. A little bit more coding. Extensions resetting. There we go. Alright. So, last session, what we did was we continued debugging, reviewing the game. We were reviewing the server file. It's a pretty big file. And we reviewed the transfer section. Everything looked good. Well, most of it. We found a few things that we could probably get rid of. We stopped at line 36. So let's jump over there. Alright. So here we have review the necessity of these imports. And then next, continue full project search of game to see if the game object is used in this file. Alright, so let's do that. See if the game object is used. And we should change these to be well, we don't have to. It's fine. I was gonna say we could change it to be integers, but so we do have the game ID as a property. This is old. Yeah, we don't use this anymore. Yeah, we pass the game ID to the threaded client. See, it gets passed to the individual game, which calls threaded client. So this is this is gone. Let's see. Most likely we should delete this section and place game ID to be created assigned immediately prior to creation of a new game child process. Is more proper. It would only require 2 to 3 lines of code and no property. It's true. That's what we did. So we're gonna go ahead and delete that. All right. Cool. Alright, let's keep going here. We're looking to see if we use this game object here. Bypasses internal game object. Okay, that's a different thing. Yeah, we don't even use it. The only time we actually use it is when it, like, we reference it to assign it to a variable. But this. If you look at this, see, the only two places, and then we don't, I don't think we use, well, we do use other game, so we need other game. So let me just put that. Wait, why would we hold up? Okay, I got you. But how does set adder? This is AI that did this. It said, this is an AI. Did the AI make up the solo? Because that's pretty freaking awesome, honestly. It's a really good solo. It's crazy. AI, dude. Welcome to the future. This is AI that did this. It said, this is an AI. Did the AI make up the solo? It's crazy. Okay, so other game is only used, but we do need it. But how do we set game object data without referencing the game object itself? I just forgot. How do we, like, how is that done? Where did we move that function to? I remember we changed the name of it. We changed the name of it to apply received data. There it is. So if we don't have the, like, obviously we have to import the game. Like, we have to have that. Oh, we put it in its own file. So we pass in current client, the tube sender ID, the directory string variable, the adder name string, the receive data. But whenever we go to run this, let's see here. Directory is equal to game, directory is equal to card. so this. Okay, so we just passed the dir string. So this one needs game, but this one doesn't. So we don't, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So apply receive data is its own file which imports the game objects. We don't actually use the game object in server. We just pass the game. We pass a string that represents, like, that refers to the object. Yeah, so let's. Yeah, so we don't need it then, right? And remember, we have two sets of imports. Like, this is for the main process, right? And then we have, yeah, these are the imports that are used. And I want to make sure I clean up these imports, because we do have like two sets of imports. I don't want to forget about them. I don't want to miss a thing, right? So yeah, so we don't even use this. We can get rid of it. We can get rid of this one. And it looks like we don't use the capital G, the class itself, either. Yeah. So we can get rid of that completely. That's cool. So, wait a second. How does server... So we have the server client. But we don't actually, like... We don't actually use this. Necessary for when if the client reconnects for threading logic. Below comment, don't run kind of blah 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 blah. So what is the? This is current client dot online, and this refers to server client, but then it says unbound. So that's cool. Which add-on is this that's telling me this? I'm not sure. Anyway, current client online. So let's see. Where do we get current client equals server client 1? But how does it know? How does it even know what server client 1 is if it's in a different process? Wait, where does server client 1 come from? Like, how does... I just feel like this is not right, because we have server client gets created in the main process, and then we set it to online for both of them, but the server client never actually gets passed to the child process. So VS Code is thinking, or and maybe I'm wrong, but it's saying that, like right here, when we do current client equals server client 1, oh yeah, and I deleted that import. I don't think... Yeah, something ain't right with this. Hold up. Something ain't right with this. How does this child process know about server client 1? And then also... Also determine how... Let's see. If server client 1/2 instances are even necessary. I don't think that they are, honestly. But let me go fix this import here. Accidentally deleted. It should be from game import p1 or p1 game V2 game. There we go. Yeah, they need those imports. Forgot about that. Alright, yeah, so here current client is equal to server client 1. I don't think that it will know about server client. Let's search for this real quick. Let's see what we got going on here. You could do shift enter or enter. So we could do shift enter and just shuffle through. How come this doesn't work? So I have to click up here. There we go. Okay, and then we have server client. Yeah, we don't even need it. We don't, but we do need. I mean, I think we do need an online thing, right? Like, do we need dot online at all? I don't know, man. I don't think we do. I always forget if unnecessary has 2 C's, dude. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't think it does. I always feel like when I add that second C, I made a mistake, but I don't know. Anywho, let's I should say. Alright. So now we have type class purpose strictly for the purpose of creating 2 server client instances to refer to them under the same namespace. There we go. That's much better. Yeah, I just lost like 7 inches, dude. I just dropped. That's a little better now. Yes, there we go. Now I can, I don't have to look up. I don't know why my seat was up so high. It was like putting strain on my neck. I was having to hang my neck down to see my monitor. So what we got here? Yeah, server client. But we need to move like self online. So here's what I'll do. I'll just move it out of it. And actually, I'll move it into server. And well, I'll leave it up here because I don't want to do some ghetto shit. I'll do it like this. Took from server clients as we deleted it, but I feel like we need this adder to exist in the child process. Review whether we do or not. Alright, so server client is going to go away. So it's gone. There we go. Now we can get rid of this. We don't need it. Right there, it's gone. And then we can do I mean, that's it. Like, we don't even, that really didn't affect anything at all, did it? And we had server client, isn't that what it's called? How does the child process even know about server client? Yeah, so that's gone. So current client here, like when we say current client, that's a big deal. That's like one of the main things we use, right? So it's going to be changed to, since we deleted server client 1 and 2, what will this namespace refer to? And yeah, so the question is, I mean, we use current client a lot, right? We use it a bunch. Am I wrong? Yeah, I mean, well, we check the current client ID. Oh, but that's in the context of threaded client. So if the only thing that we actually need is the ID, yeah, if the only thing we need is the ID, then we just don't even need to have this. But I feel like we will. I could be wrong. Let's see. I just feel like that was the main thing we used for a very long time. I mean, but that is in the client file, and we have made changes, so it might not be this way anymore. So this is in threaded client, and technically this could just be replaced with client ID integer. Yeah. Quite certain this can be replaced with client ID integer. If so, replace all instances of this in the child process. Hey, that sounds like what I play when I play piano. I play like my own little thing on piano. And it sounds a lot like that. Yeah, I do a little thing like that. I don't really know how to play, but anyway. So current client, that's just the initial reference. This could be changed to client ID int, right? Like 99.9% certain of that. We don't need that to be yeah, that could be client ID int. All that could. Yeah, and honestly, this is just this has just become a middleman, I guess. It's just a different name that refers to the same object. Yeah, so all this could just use client ID integer. And that's great. So we can just like change this. But wait, isn't the client ID wait. But isn't it supposed to be a 1 or a 2? Hold up. Let me be careful. Yeah, this is supposed to be 1 or 2. But the client ID... Okay. So wait a second. I have to add this to things to do. This is really important. I just realized. we'll say client ID to, and we'll just say to 1 or 2 confusion. Review issue in server. Review all code associated with client ID to ensure that we have one. The first thing is we are converting using client ID or singular namespace for the individual data point. And then number 2 is ensure clients the greater, or what do you call it, like the identifying ID for the client, which starts at 1 and goes up for each client connected to the parent process up to infinity, should be converted to either 1 or 2 within the child process. This is necessary for code which uses the 1 to 2 to determine logic, server-side logic. We'll probably need a separate data point / namespace for this. So we'd have the multi-digit client ID would be, we'll call it I don't know. They both are they're both an identifier, but one of them refers to, I guess we could just call it the multi-digit client ID or the single-digit client ID. That would be pretty clear. Like that removes any ambiguity. It's pretty straightforward. But I don't really like that. I forgot to set our timer here. So 42 minutes. So we're 26. Yeah, all right. I don't like that. I don't like that name. Couldn't we call it the... We'll have the primary client ID. and then we would have the internal client ID, or we could just say client 1 or client 2 int. I mean, that would be, so we could just leave the client ID as client ID, and then we could make the 1 or 2 client ID be the yeah, I guess we could just call it the client ID 1 or 2 int. We have client ID 1 or 2 int, and then we have the client ID int. I feel like that's pretty clear. That's pretty clear, right? So we have the client ID, and then we have the client ID 1 or 2 int, and it lets us know that it's going to be 1 or 2. That's probably that's probably as good as I'm going to be able to get it. So we need to change this. Let's see. Ensure namespace changes are made carefully to affect all related code. Right, because we don't want to mess anything up here. All right. So, yeah, what we need to do, and also this current client thing. Okay, so current client ID is basically going to become, current client ID is essentially gonna become current, or it's gonna be called client ID 1 or 2 int. That's what because that's the child process 1 or 2 version, right? Yeah, so if we just scroll through, let me make sure. So all this is in context of 1 or 2. Yeah, so this is going to be either, it's going to be either client 1 or 2. So we want the data exchange to be in that context, right? Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, we want it to be in the in either 1 or 2. We want it to either be 1 or 2. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Alright, so and that was every instance of current client, and they were all in the context of the child process. So we're gonna add that over here, and it'll be after, say, change all server-side code in server.py. So that current client namespace for current client changed to client ID 1 or 2 int. Verified that all instances the file refer the child process ID 1 or 2. Yep, so let's go back over here. Alright. So now we're going to go down here to the main process, and we have to change this so that, let's see, okay, this is the main process section. Okay, client ID. What did we say we're going to call it? Client ID int. So it's just going to be client ID int. So let's Control F, and we're going to change it. Control C, toggle replace, Control client ID int. All right. So from here, that's going to be changed to client ID integer. And then this is going to pass the then we're gonna pass the client ID int into it. Okay. Right, and the client ID int is gonna start at 1, and it goes up each time, right? So we pass in. Wait, what? So we do client ID and then we do client ID plus equals 2? I remember that we did that. So we pass in. Okay, now go to individual game. Damn it, why does shit gotta be all complicated, bro? God damn. Alright, and then from here we get the client ID, and then what do we do with it? Client ID equals client ID, and then we say client 1 ID equals self.client ID, and then client 2 ID equals self.client ID plus 1. Okay, that's got to be simplified. That's goofy. That's goofy. It's confusing. What we'll do is we're gonna have the client 1 ID and the client 2 ID get passed. Okay, so from here, what do we do? From here we have, and this is an individual game server. So client ID is the overall client ID. Fuck. And then we have the client 1 ID and then the client 2 ID. And then we end up passing this, I guess, at some point. Right here, if client ID int is equal to 1, client ID equals self. What the hell? Alright. Okay. What the hell? Okay. I see. And then we generate the client token and we send them the client ID. Okay, and this does have to be a unique client ID. It has to be and that's what it should be called. It should be called the unique client ID. True. That's what we need to do. It needs to be called the unique. That lets us know for sure, certainly, it's the unique client ID int. And then this would be the, we'll say the 1 or 2 client ID int. Yeah. That's better. I know I was gonna get it, dude. So I have 1 or 2 client ID int. Shit. Multi-digit client ID is equal to the unique client ID int. I know it's complicated, bro. It's not that complicated, but I made it complicated, unfortunately. So we have this here. Client ID is equal to 1 client ID equals self dot client 1 ID. Yeah, all this got to be changed a little bit. So this needs to be the unique client ID. We need to do that. So straight up, this should be handled to make this much better. I think what should happen is, since the client token relies on the unique client ID, we could well, don't really need to do all that. We could just pass the unique client ID to the child process. I mean, because I feel like the child process does need that ID. It needs to be able, the child process needs to know. I mean, unless we like generated the client token, but then if we needed to generate another one, we wouldn't have the unique client ID inside the child process. So the unique client ID does need to get past the child process. But this here just doesn't, this doesn't need to be here. That's confusing me. That's not what needs to happen. And this, let's see, 8, 11, 25, so we know that. Alright. So this here should be the client ID argument. This should refer to, we'll say, well, this is supposed to refer to each client's unique client ID. But does it really need to have a unique, does it really need to have the unique client ID in the context of the process? I mean, I think that's the way to do it. It's just more proper. Yeah. I feel like that's the way to go. So this does need to be the unique client ID right here. But how do we pass that? What's the best way to get that here? So we're gonna be passing the client ID. And then after we do this, we're gonna, let's see, 1 or 2. We're gonna review all the client ID code. Yeah, so we're gonna review all that. This is some bullshit, dude. I thought I had all this right. This is dumb. So let's go back down here. Let's start at the beginning, which is, this is not like the beginning is like at the end, which is weird. But let's get this. The very first time the client ID is introduced is right here. And this is where we want it to be. We want it to be called the unique client ID integer. So let's find, we're gonna change this to be unique. I'm gonna copy paste it in. Unique client ID integer. And let's put a descriptor for it. So we'll say the unique client ID that starts at 1 and goes up +1 for each connected client. Goes up to infinity, right? And this is the game ID. This is going to be basically the same thing, but for the game, this is going to be the unique game ID that starts at 1 and goes up for each created game. Goes up to infinity. True. All right. Now we need to change this. Let's see, where do we have client ID right here? So there we did. And then this needs to be changed to unique client ID int. Alright. And now this is going to be changed. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. This is going to get replaced. Technically, we could create a class with attributes and just pass in the instance as one arg, and it would have the client 1 socket, the client 2 socket, the child process ID, the reconnect port, the game ID, all that, instead of passing them as args. I mean, honestly, it's 6 one way, half a dozen another. It would just shorten this up, but I mean, this is fine. It's not that complicated. I mean, I think this is okay. All right. So now we need to modify individual game itself. So then we're going to change this to take It's ugly. It's getting fixed though. I see what to do now. I see. I've figured this shit out. It was taking me some time. I had to cut out all the middlemen. We just create the unique client ID in the main process for each client. Pass them directly to the we create them in the main process, pass each of them to the child process. Then within the child process, we just will always refer to the client 1 unique client ID int or the client 2 unique client ID int to assign like it's this is the client 1 ID. Like there isn't gonna be another one for 1 and 2. It's just this one, and it's the client 1 ID. Um, and whenever we create the I mean the thread, um, we're just gonna pass it directly. If we're gonna pass for the first client, we're gonna pass them client 1 unique client ID int, and then for the second client, we're gonna pass them client 2 unique client ID int. And I think that should take care of everything, right? I think it should. Um, and honestly, we don't even need to have this header. Let's show you. We don't need that, right? So now we'll go down here. See client ID, client token dictionary, client. Okay. Yep, I got it. It took a while for me to process exactly, because I want to make sure I get it right this first time. I don't want to like do it again. I don't want to mess with it again. Like after this, this is it. This isn't a middleman refactor. This is like it. I'm not messing with it again anymore. Once we finish it, it's done. All right. So. Alright, so game testing, debugging, review, part 11. That's correct. 8/11/25, 119 to 248, 1.5 hours. That's correct. Continue debugging, reviewing the game to test. Specifically, we continue review of entire server pod. Realize we have inconsistencies associated with client ID namespaces and began entire refactor of server. Pi have a much improved system with fewer namespaces, etc. Stopped line 208 in server. Stage committed push change to remote repo. Create a new local backup. That is indeed correct. Make sure we're at the root of the project directory, which we are. Check our branch. We're at the root. We are at the root. We're on the right branch. Now we're gonna git add to stage everything. Git commit -m double quotes. Paste in. There we go. Now we have our commit successfully. Now we're gonna push to the remote GitHub repository. There it goes. It has pushed up to the cloud. Now we can go ahead and close this out. Go down here. Boom, go to programming, projects, enter into Canasta, copy that, go to backup, we're going to delete this one, paste in that one, go to text, devlog, 8/11, that's correct. Now we go back out here, we forgot to change the folder name, there we go. Alright, that's going to be it. Yeah, so honestly, that was a little bit of a nightmare. Just because... well, took me a little bit to figure out exactly how it needed to be fixed. So there's a little bit of just like brain dead, sitting there thinking, time, which is not really like, it's just aggravating when I have to sit there and like drool for a little while and think about what I need to do. But I wanted to make sure I got it right the first time. I don't want to do it again, and I think I pretty much got it right. Yeah, so we create the client 1 unique client ID and the client 2 unique client ID, and in the main process at the very beginning we start them off as 1 and then 2, and then we're going to increment them each by plus by plus 2 really is what we need to do. That's what we're going to do. So every time a new client connects, we're going to increment each one. Like, we'll have to, I wanted it to be even more simple than that. Technically, I could just have the client ID and then have that get translated into the client 1 unique client ID, and we could do that. We could make it to where, honestly, 1 and 2 is just, 1 and 2 ends up being more complicated than you would think, man. It really does. It sounds so simple, but the way it ends up being a little bit more complicated than that. Like the way that we do this here, we could start off with just a regular client ID like we had before, and then for each person that connects, we would increment the client ID by 1, and then we would assign it, like if the number is even or if the number is odd, then we would assign it to the client 1 unique client ID int. And then we could do, if it's even, we assign it to the client 2 unique client ID int. Yeah, we could do it like that. So we could increment the client right here. So we'd start off with just client ID as 1. Then once the first client connected, we would go from we would increment client ID, and then we would say the client 1 unique client ID int equals that incremented client ID. And then same thing, we just do the same thing right here. We'd increment client ID and then assign it to 2, the client 2 unique ID, and then we would just pass to this child process exactly as we do it now. The only real improvement that would bring, well, it would make it to where because currently we would have to increment see how we do, like we have to increment. Where do we do the increment of the client ID? Right here. So before we did client ID plus 2. But the way that we would have to do it here is we would have to increment each one of them by 2, right? We would say client 1 unique client ID int plus equals 2. So then it would go from 1 to 3. And then we would do the same thing for the client 2 unique client ID. We would do plus equals 2, and then it would equal 4. So we would have 1 and 2, and then it would become 3 and 4 by adding plus 2 to each of them. 1 would become 3, 2 would become 4, and then the next client that connects, the next 2 client that connect, we would pass in the client ID, and they would have been incremented right here. So they would refer to 3 and 4, and then it would happen again. The next people that would connect would be it would go from 3 to 5, and then 4 to 6. Yeah, so we'll do that, and I'm going to stop here. We'll say can replace this with client 1, just so I don't forget unique client, because I think that is a good solution, honestly. Plus equals 2, and the same thing with for client 2. So we say plus client 2 unique client ID plus equals 2. Yeah, easy. So that's what we're gonna do. So let's go ahead here, and we don't do a local backup yet, did we? Yeah, so this was actually 255, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. No, we did do a local backup. I'm tripping. Yeah, we did. Alright, yeah, so that's going to be it. I'll come back. We'll do some more later. But for now,